Stridente meets Bobby Kennedy. Early influences.
Music was always on in the house. We used to dance to Top of the Pops. We used to do like a little show. And my first one, when I was 4 years old, I attempted to sing Space Oddity by David Bowie. So that's my first performance as such. My earliest records I remember are my mum and dad's. So that would be Everly Brothers, Buddy Holly, Gene Vincent. My sisters, who were into Northern Soul and funk and disco. Then I've got my brother who was into glam rock, prog rock, punk rock. Then my next brother who new wave, mod revival, synthesizer, new wave. And then obviously my generation comes along after that. It's things like the Smiths, the Cure, and then after that acid house, and then after that Britpop, and after that post-rock, post-punk.
Music projects.
The very first band I was in was at school when I was 10. We didn't have instruments, we just used to make the noise of the instrument. After that, I tried to form a band with my friend Martin and Mark. We didn't have drums, so we used to use a tyre, a wheel. And then it wasn't until about 1988 when I went to art college and I met Spanner, who I'm still making music with today. He's the first person that allowed me to play an instrument. When I was at school, I refused to learn how to play an instrument. They're like, well, you can't play. I'm like, it doesn't matter. I can see where the keys are, so I can get an octave. That sounds okay already. Boom, 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 boom. There's a disco track. Like, no. So they would rehearse with guitar and learn Beatles songs and things like this. And if I tried to play keyboards, they would stop me. Fuck them. So then Spanner, he had an old acoustic guitar and his electric guitar. He would play his electric guitar and allow me to create bass lines on the acoustic guitar, and we would jam and jam and jam and jam. And it would be the same repetitive sort of bass line, which then somebody says, that sounds like Can. I'm like, I haven't really listened to Can, I know who they are. I was like, oh, I see what you mean. Oh, so people do make this music, which then gave me the confidence to try and go a bit further. Then after that, we were at university together, and we had a band called Egg, E-G-G-G-G, because there was already another band called Egg. Then the keyboard player who was in the band, Simon, he went off to form his own sort of drum and bass thing. He's still recording today with a band called Spree. And then fast forward, say, another 10 years, and we're in London, and I decide I'm going to form a band, but it has to be like this. That band was called Plaka. The idea was that the band was from the past, predicting the future. So we had to put ourselves back in 1979 to imagine what was going to happen, even though it already had. So this was in Stoke Newington, and on the scene at the time, the other bands that were playing, yeah, they'd give us gigs, but they kind of treat us as if we were a comedy band. Because it's just Bobby doing that thing. It's, you know, it's just nonsense. And it wasn't till we'd been going a good 7 years, and all of a sudden we did a gig, and the rest of the bands in Stoke Newington went, oh. I was like, what? He says, what are you doing differently? This is really good. I'm like, well, we're not doing anything differently. I'm still got the same idea of what I was doing before. It's just now it sounds relevant, but 7 years ago it didn't. And now, because there's other bands trying to do this sort of electronic 80s new wave sort of feel, we sound relevant, even though we didn't change. You's changed, you know. But that was nice to know, because then we got more gigs and all of a sudden a certain amount of respect. So that band went on. Then the drummer had a kid. Spanner, who was in the band, he was playing guitar then, he had a kid. People were getting married, so it was kind of hard to rehearse or perform. So I went, okay, we'll rest the band for now, and then maybe when people have got more time, we'll do it again. But that sort of didn't happen. And now it's Cowboy Flying Saucer. We've been together now 5 years, and it was a chance meeting in a pub. I was working at the bar. Johnny, who's now the guitarist, came in. He had his Moog t-shirt, or Moog t-shirt. I had a Kraftwerk t-shirt. I went, like your t-shirt? He went, like your t-shirt. Chat, chat, chat. He says, come around my house sometime. You can see my attic. So I went up the stairs to the attic and looked in the room. I was like, oh my God. More or less identical to what Spanner has. My friend Spanner, the same amount of guitars, the same amount of boxes, keyboards, synths, pedals. He played me some music that he'd been writing, which sounded a bit like the music that Spanner writes by himself. It was a bit more house music. I was like, oh, I could have 2 Spanners. That was my first thought, one on either side. Then Johnny says, my friend Dave plays drums. Should I bring him along? It's like, yeah, bring him along. So this rehearsal went really well. I was like, hang on a minute. With this man now playing drums, this is all working. We've done 2 LPs and 1 split single, all on vinyl. And if you do go on Bandcamp, you can download for free, but we'd rather you maybe paid some money. But if you put 0 in, you'll get it for nothing. But we still have vinyl available. So the first album, eponymous title, Cowboy Flying Saucer, Cowboy Flying Saucer. The single, which was a split single with a band called Magoo. So our drummer Dave used to be in the band Magoo. They used to tour with Mogwai, Lamb, a lot of the alternative Scottish bands at the time. We were fortunate enough to have Dee. She came and played some improvised saxophone, which just added to the sedated feel of the song. And where we record is in Magoo's studios, which is over in Norfolk. The second album is called Travelodge. That came about a song called Travelodge Wedding. So we used Travelodge as the title. The song itself was a true story. I was coming back from holiday. I was staying in the hotel after the airport because it was a late flight. Stayed in a Travelodge. Just come back from Greece. First thing I wanted was a British beer. So I went to the bar and it said, due to stock, we've had to close the bar at 11 p.m. tonight. I was like, oh, bollocks. And then I looked about. I was like, hang on a minute. There's a lot of men in suits with unbranded beer. There's a woman in a wedding dress over there and women in hats and things like this. I'm like, oh, they've decided to have their wedding at the Travelodge and they were already arguing. And it's like, well, they must have only been married 3 hours ago. And she's already at his throat and he's at her throat. The auntie's going, leave it, he's not worth it, all this. I'm like, oh my God. And my husband Chris is like, no, do not engage, do not speak to them. I'm like, Chris, I know I like talking to people and I'll talk to anybody. I says, but sometimes I know when to stay away. I says, but if they talk to me, I can't be rude. And so the auntie, who was walking in and out, she had no shoes on, she had an ankle bracelet, and she just walking into where all the cigarettes were, bare feet, and I'm like... So the lyric was, Travelodge Wedding, auntie in the ash, wearing an ankle bracelet, she's cutting a dash. And it just started from there, and so it's a story about whoever these people were, good luck to them, but you don't have a wedding in a Travelodge. The wonderful thing about this band, Cowboy Flying Saucer, is there is no actual leader. We're not going to suggest we want to go in that direction or we want to go in that direction. It's the direction we will get pulled towards anyway. I mean, we've all got different influences, but I think we have started to create our sound. I mean, for instance, one of the lads was worried the other day, a couple of new songs that were starting to build, and he was like, oh, this one's the same as the other song. I'm like, well, it's not. It's completely different. He says, but the riff is similar. I says, yeah, it is similar. I says, but how many bands have written songs and you go, well, that one sounds like that one and that one sounds like that one, and then you realise that's because they've created our sound. So hopefully we have sort of created a sound that is definitely recognisable as us. Obviously our influences can be heard from other bands. We always get told we sound a bit like The Fall. We always get told we sound a bit like Pill. Happy Mondays we've had Can mentioned, we've had Half Man Half Biscuit, we've had Gong mentioned. To be told that you sound like certain bands that you love is always fantastic. It's not an insult, it's a compliment. Somebody asked me to give a description and it's almost impossible, but so I just said it was kraut punk psychedelia. If one member of the band isn't available, we will become a side project, which is Disco Cowboy Magic. It'll be improvised pieces on a theme, or completely improvised on the spot.
Evidently Chicken Town.
Apart from my band, I've been lucky enough to meet lots of wonderful other bands through an event I regularly host at Biddle Brothers in Clapton. The night's called Evidently Chicken Town. It's named after a John Cooper Clap track. It was started by my nephew, not me. My nephew had moved to London and I said, that pub looks good, make that your local, you live around the corner. 2 weeks later, Uncle Bobby, I've got us a night at Biddle Brothers. I'm like, what? You've only been here 2 weeks? It took me years to get anything started. I'm like, well done. I said, well, what's it going to be about? He says, well, spoken word, and I want you to DJ. I was like, okay. And then it sort of mutated from spoken word into spoken word and music, and generally experimental music. Well, hopefully experimental music. So I've been doing it now for, it must be 8 years. Generally it's once a month, and when people send me a link asking if they can play, I never listen to the link, so I'm always surprised what I'm going to get on the evening. Whether that's a good idea or a bad idea, I don't know, but it seems to work for me. I've seen more bands there than I've seen in my life, and I've seen better bands there than I've seen on main stages in the past. You know, it's always a pleasure and a surprise, and it's a nice community. I think it's become a community. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here now talking with Angelo, because this is how we all met, and I've had a lot of help from other acts, and particularly I will mention Justin, because he's helped me source and find so many absolutely wonderful musicians and performers and artists through his connections.
Future.
We've got at least one gig every month coming up. Hopefully before the end of the year, I would like to have another LP recorded. Probably it will be an EP, because the bass player Spanner, he's leaving the country 2020 to go move to Australia. So I want to get the most out of him before he goes. And then what happens after that, I don't know, because this is a journey that's been going on with me and Spanner since 1988. He's been in my life constantly since I was 18. For him not to be there, I don't know what that actually might do. That'll be quite sad, because I've known him 30 years.
Social media.
We're on Bandcamp, we're on Spotify, we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, Instagram, we have our own website, and if you Google Cowboy Flying Saucer, you will find us.